I've recorded every single Mythic Plus key that I've attempted in Season 1 of The War Within, and in this series I'm going to cover the highs and lows of each dungeon on my way to pushing to the 0.1% title. So, the 5th episode was full of depletes, and we barely got any score, but we did manage to breach the 2.8k bracket, so now we are currently sat at 2,801 score. But what I feel like has happened here, I've just been playing so many keys this season that I feel like these episodes have really been falling behind. Like some of these keys that we're timing, I literally don't even know when they were from. 2-3 weeks ago, maybe? So you guys that are watching this series are like, what does this idiot think he's doing pushing to title, but he's still only timing like 10s, 11s, and 12s? Don't worry, we are much further ahead than that, but no spoilers. So what I think I'm going to do is kind of just fly through some keys. If there's not too much to learn from them, then we're just going to get through them, and then we're going to try and play a bit of catch up here and get up to speed. I don't want to be exactly on speed, because that means that I've got pressure to do keys when I might not be able to do them, and the episodes might fall behind. But let's crack on with some keys. So we started off with a 12 miss. We had actually already timed a 12 miss before, but we did end up getting some score out of this, so I have to report on it. We blasted Ingram Malok. I love playing this boss as Arcane. It's just the perfect spec for that damage phase. And then on the pack just before the last boss, we had everything lined up here. The only thing we didn't have was Lust, but 40 stacks of Spy Masters. I won the lottery with the Orb Barrage procs in this pool as well. I've just realized I'm still playing Sun Fury. Like, that's how old these keys are. Like, we have long changed to Spellslinger by this point, but I missed the Arcane Soul windows, because as you can see here, we're getting up to over 6 million DPS. We are pumping. And then we do finish up the key. We get 2 score out of this, so very, very little score, but I do want to report on every score gain that we get, so it doesn't feel like you guys are missing out on anything. Then the final key in this stream was a 12 City of Threads. We actually play a super nice route here at the start. Now, I think it's actually more optimal to go round the bottom where the extra web mages are, so that you can get the extra buff from your priests, rogues, or tailorers. I'm not sure what the last one is, but then you can take that buff into the first boss, and I think that's really going to speed up your key. But our route right here, I love, because we actually skip pretty much everything in the start, and then we make up for loads of percent later by doing some massive pulls where the tank will just kite out all the damage from it. But for this route, you do need either a rogue or a priest to mind soothe the mob so that you can walk past. Skipping over to the second boss, because these were kind of the first 12s that we were still doing at this point, this was still really, really scary. But Artie had some really nice master spells on this fight for when the icicles go out. Then skipping over to the last mini boss, this area is terrifying. Like, that you just constantly need to be rolling your defensives here, but you also need your defensives for every single mob, like the last 2 mini bosses, and then you definitely need everything for the last boss. So the Hulking Warshell was about to die. We had all ticked down from the Ravenous Swarm, and then the Tremor Slam was about to go out. As you can see, every single one of my defensives are on cooldown. So I was scrambling to find my health pot here, but I had just recently changed my keybind, so I ended up fat fingering my trinket. So I just pressed my Spy Master's web when the mini boss is about to die, and we're not even on the last boss. So that was turbo bad for my damage. And we do end up timing this key with 1 death. We did have 1 death on the last boss from the Chamois. He was just low when the Umbral Weave went out, so he just ticked out to that. But the rest of this key was really smooth. And at the time that we timed this key was like a top 200 or 300 key in the world. So yeah, this was quite early on, but we all played really well during this key, and we managed to get 24 score out of this at the end, which does take us up to 2,827. Moving on to the next stream then, we're in a plus 11 Necrotic Wake. Back on Arcane here, I'd love to be able to get to the point on Mage, and I will, where I'm comfortable on both specs, or at least Frost and Arcane, right? So that I can play them in the different dungeons, because I do believe Arcane's better in some, and then Frost is better in others. Tried a little strat here of kiting Blightbone all the way down the middle, because we had pulled some other mobs that we don't normally pull. This gives you a lot more space, and to be honest, we kind of just copied this from Yoda. It means that you can kite all the way back down the middle to the start and then pull some adds in for some extra funnel. Moving on to Amarth, me and Artie were blasting this boss. The boss is almost dead, and we're still sustaining almost 3 million damage here, but I do end up dying. Again, just being necrotic bolted to death, and you can't see who it's targeting, so I could have kicked it. I mean, to be fair, I'm trying to save my kicks for the frostbolt volleys anyway, and I do get shot by the crossbowman right next to me, so I end up just dying to that. Definitely could have been more aware and pressed like an ice block if I had seen the crossbowman, but I think I just got caught by surprise that the necrotic bolt hit me. Then another very, very fun boss for Arcane. We have Stitch Flesh with our 40 stacks of Spy Master's Web cooked up, all of our cooldowns. And of course, we easily end up one-phasing it in 11, which is real nice. Both of us sustaining over 3 million damage here, and that's without Lust, so in higher keys, I'm sure we're still going to be very comfortable on this, and this is while I'm still on Sun Fury as well. And with 2 deaths, we do end up 2-chesting this key, so we get 13 score out of it, taking us up to 2,840. Necrotic Wake is such a weird one, because if you play it well, the timer does feel pretty free, but if there is a bit of scuffery in there somewhere, then it feels like this key is just so tight on the timer. Straight into a 12 siege then. At the very start, I normally just put my altar ready to altar straight back up after the Shattering Bellow, but I literally got firebombed in the same global that the Bellow went off. I should have Dragon's Breathed it. In these higher keys, we definitely learnt now that we need to be stopping firebombs, especially with overlaps, or especially if they're double casted on one person. But we were still new to these kind of key levels, so stuff was hitting a lot harder that we weren't used to. I know that Shattering Bellow does a lot of my health, but I can live it if it's the only damage going out, and then I just alter straight back up so the healer doesn't even need to look at me. Jumping over to the first boss, I got the first on the hook, and my positioning was kind of bad anyway, but like the problem was my positioning here. Then we got Iron hooked in, he did the gore crash and immediately retargeted me. I mean, I was kind of not expecting to be targeted twice by the on the hook, but now, this isn't even me making excuses, because you can actually see it, and I'm so grateful that you can actually see this on the VOD, is I got some FPS lag as he like retargeted me and ran over with the fixate. Not sure what was going on there, because I was trying to blink just past the bomb so that I would kite him straight into it, but yeah, it didn't go off, and he does just end up meleeing me. So that was embarrassing, but I mean, that was an FPS issue, it felt like. As you can see, I was pretty confused, and also pretty tilted that happened. Skipping over to the spooky Demolisher packs then, I actually got an IRL affix here. My sister came in the room and was like kind of distracting me while I was playing. I was like, no, go away. I'm trying to time my plus 12 key. But we end up ninja pulling the Demolisher from behind us, and then the other Demolisher patrols onto us. So you definitely do not want to be pulling double Demolisher, because these crushing slams will almost one-shot you as it is. So you're going to have to cycle your defensives very well. And to be fair, we actually end up doing that. We have some nice stops, nice kicks on the smaller adds, and then some nice defensive usage for the Demolishers. But yeah, this was hard to deal with while I was being distracted in real life. I think in higher keys, if you do accidentally double pull these, it is just over. I don't think there's any viable way that you can actually live both of these, because in the higher keys, the crushing slams are going to one-shot you. You're going to need big defenses for every single one. At this key level, I can still live with like a barrier and an alter time. It does like 60-70% of my health, and then I ping myself straight back up. But because we played it quite well, we had no deaths. Then moving up the stairs, kind of awkward. We ended up playing the Commander and Raider by themselves when we both pretty much had our cooldowns. I'm not really sure why we did this. There we go. That's because we did the double pull up the top. I hate this double pull, man. Like, now I know what I know about snipers. Apparently, if you stand behind them, they only hit the tank or something like that. But this pull is just like a death sentence. There is so much outgoing damage. You've got so many potential overlaps as well, with the Raider pulling you in with the Iron Hook. The Azerite charge hits like a truck as well. We've now actually started skipping and just leaving this sniper pack up in the corner because it is so scary. But yeah, I do not like this pull at all. I feel like, especially as we had played the key so nicely up until this point, I felt like it was just the easiest way that we were just going to deplete this key and throw it. Somehow, with some nice, again, defensive usage and stop usage, we do actually end up living the pull with no deaths. But I had no cooldowns here. I mean, that's probably on me. I should have looked at the route beforehand, and then I would have saved my cooldowns, but I just, even the fact of playing those two mobs at the start by themselves, it feels horrible. So we have stopped doing that since, but it definitely made this key a little spooky. And then on the last boss, we were kind of debating where we wanted to send our Bloodlust, because we had it up. I mean, we had it up on the third boss, but we wanted to save it for the last boss because that is the scarier of the two. And we decided that we were going to lust the second platform. I didn't really understand what we were going for here, so I actually held my cooldowns to pair up with the lust. But what I should have done is use my cooldowns on the first platform, and then use Lust on the second platform, then use my cooldowns on the third platform to kind of just bridge that gap, because we ended up giga overkilling the second platform. That's on me, and it definitely made the last platform a lot scarier. I mean, I don't know, maybe in high keys, they're actually saving Lust for the last platform. Because of the lack of space, I feel like it's just so much more panicky. But even with 4 deaths on this last boss, we managed to send the key home. We get 28 score out of it, taking us up to 2,868. After all the deaths on the last boss, I was like, oh no, we've done a Vesp here. We are depleting on the last boss after playing a really nice key. But we did manage to get it done. So moving on to the last key of this stream then, we had a 13 Arakara, very timeable key, definitely one of the easier keys to time. Got absolutely bullshitted on this first mini boss. We had everything up, did a big pull with the lust, and I get killed by the frontal. So the frontal goes out, I see it go out, and you can quite clearly see where the frontal stops. I mean, obviously it's not where it stops because I died to it, but I moved so far to the right of where the frontal is telegraphed, and apparently I'm still stood in it. Like, if you can see, I'm even pretty much in the same line as Osmic, the resto chamois, and he doesn't die to it, but I get killed by it. It's actually mental that I got killed by this. I was so tilted. Like, it is just so much wider than it appears. So that was a horrible start to the key. And I think it kind of set me up for a bit of a tilter key, to be honest. Moving on to the second mini boss. I've used block for the first call of the brood that goes out, massive AoE ticking damage to the whole party. And to be honest, as you can see, this is a 13 and it's almost dead for the second one. So this is the first time that we've actually seen a second call of the brood. I think I read chat as it was coming out, was not prepared for it at all and just instantly died to it. That's on me. I had greater invis, I had mirror image and alter time up, so I definitely could have lived here. I just was not prepared for it at all. Over to the first boss. I guess it's because it was a 13. We got a little bit scared with this boss, but with a frost mage, generally this boss is super easy, especially with a shadow priest, because I literally just blizzard and orb and slow the ads while Artie just funnels off and passively kills all the ads. But for whatever reason on this fight, it felt like this boss took forever. I think at this point in the season as well, I was over-committing to Gossamer Onslaught. I don't think it actually does that much damage, and I think it is just out-healable by the healer. I need to kind of save my defenses for the Alerting Shrill, because that is what chunks. And then once we get the first boss down, we take out the next pack, and then we chain these last two assistants into the next pack with Bloodlust. But because my orb and blizzard and all that are already ticking as Relentless is gathering the mobs, as soon as we bloodlust, I get instantly bopped by the assistant and die. My mental had already gone boom, but it went double boom at this point. So thank God it was the last key of the day. I don't know if the key was still timeable at this point, so we carried on, but then Relentless does die to just a double extraction strike. He was about 50% HP when both of them went off, so yeah, he just got absolutely clapped by that. And that is definitely the key done right there. But to be honest, I wasn't too mad about it. I was playing horribly in this key. I mean, to be fair, I did get bullshitted by that first frontal, but it was a decent attempt for one of our first 13s. Look at this, back to back, 3 streams in a row. I'm spoiling you guys with my handsome face. So we started this stream off with a 13 City of Threads. We did the same nice route skip at the start where we use Mind Soothe and go around the left of the mobs. Again, should probably be utilizing that extra buff that we can get for the first boss to speed up the first boss. But I'm just a huge fan of this route as it is. Again, like we saw earlier, this is the one time that you're actually thankful for having a Shadow Priest in your group because we get Master Spells, really nice Master Spells on the second boss. Whenever those icicles go out, they leave a magic dot on everybody that ticks really hard, so we just want to be stacked up, wait for the Master Spell, and then we're Gucci. And then because we do so much skipping at the start, here is where we make up all the percent. So Relly just runs in, pulls like 3 packs, and then it definitely helps that we have a Frost Mage massively here, but you can do it with other specs by using like your Earthbind Totems, your Kona Colds if you're an Arcane Mage, for example. But Frost obviously just makes it infinitely easier, so he just gets aggro on all of the mobs, goes in when he has defensives and drops his debuff that makes him take increased damage, just to keep that aggro while we absolutely destroy all of the mobs at the same time. You do have to be wary here with not over pulling because these pursuers do their knife throw and that does do a lot of damage. Playing Frost Mage on these massive AoE pools is so fun though, man. Like the amount of Frozen Orb resets that you get with Spellslinger, which by the way, after 11.0.5, you get even more now. But also just because your Blizzard is taking on so many mobs, you just get passive, like you can just constantly fire out Frozen Orbs basically. It feels so nice. Again, it's this deadly trio that are back-to-back where you need defensives every 3 seconds, it feels like. So I'm going into the last boss completely dry of defensives. We did end up overcommitting on the War Shell because I didn't realize that we had Zephyr for one of them. That's just one of those things like in comms you would be calling that and therefore you wouldn't have overlaps and you'd feel a lot more tanky. But yeah, on this last boss, you need big defensives for the Umbral Weave, you need big defensives for the Tremor Slam. The Splice is just gonna like passively take your whole group down as well. And that's what's so nice about playing Frost. I've been playing quite a bit of Arcane recently, and the one thing that I miss the most about Frost is having Cold Snap to be able to have 2 ice blocks or ice colds. It just makes you feel so much more tanky. This last boss is so terrifying, man. Like, that's the thing about City of Threads. As you can see, up until this last boss, we had no deaths because the trash is generally pretty easy in this place. It is kind of a boss-heavy dungeon. So on ISO, we do end up losing Seb. He just ticks down. Well, we're all ticking down to the splice. He ticks down even lower. I feel like in this fight, he is probably the squishiest of the lot of us, except for the healer. And then partly because I had no damage when the Umbral Weave went out for the ads or the roots that spawned, plus Seb dying, we didn't actually have the damage to kill off the weaves. I don't need to kill my own because I can just blink out for when the orbs travel towards us. But the chamois is still rooted when it gets pulled to his location, so he dies, he anks instantly. And then we get Seb back up once we're safe and feeling like we can. Then we send the Bloodlust towards the end of the fight just to send it home, and we time the key with around 45 seconds left. And guys, remember, this is before the recent changes where we got the extra 90 seconds with the Challenger's Peril. By the way, weirdest band-aid fix ever. I don't know. Blizzard, just get rid of Challenger's Peril. Make it back to 5 seconds, please and thanks. We'll take the extra 90 seconds though, but that was not present for this key. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we're timing 13 City of Threads. I think this was actually the key that was like top 200 or top 300. My bad. Not the 12 earlier, but was super happy with timing this key. Healer was a monster as well, so shout out to him. And we get 13 score out of this, taking us up to 2,881. Very close to 2.9 now. Jump over to a Dawnbreaker 13 in the same stream. This key seems to be our arch nemesis though. This key should be so free in inverted commas, but somehow we always manage to brick it. On the third ship, because I had 40 stacks of Spy Master's Web and everything ready to go into the first boss, I get the Bursting Cocoon as the Web Mage is the only mob left. I commit Barrier, Mirror Image, and Alter Time to it, but apparently that was not enough, and I just get one shot by it. I did not want to overcommit and commit another defensive here. I mean, looking back on it now, I could have, because I don't really need any defensives for the first boss. But after pressing 3 defensives, I mean, I know the Altered Time is not really a defensive. It's kind of just like a heal. Maybe the healer could have topped me up for it, because I do tick down to around 60% health as it's about to explode. So it's just unlucky. Like, I should have pressed my ice block. Then we had a little bit of scuffage after the first mini-boss. We had just done a massive chain pull into the first mini-boss, so I guess Sorelli was probably dry on defensives for this next pack. And he does get dropped just as we're pretty much killing everything, so we do manage to finish off the pack. But we did end up with 3 deaths because of this. I think he died to an Umbral Rush, but it happens. Then after this, we move on to the second mini-boss with Lust and all our cooldowns up. I think we definitely now do go to the third mini-boss with the Dark Orb instead. That's the one that you want to be lusting. That's got horrible, scary overlaps on it. This one with the AoE, you can kind of just like prepare a defensive for every Shadowy Decay and you'll be fine. It's very predictable. But the Dark Orb mini-boss, there's a lot more that can go wrong, and you can also pull more mobs into it to make the Lust even more worth it down there. And then speaking of the third mini-boss, we head down on over to him next. And keeping with the theme of this episode, we died to another bullshit Frontal. Now, this one I'm definitely a lot closer to, and I can kind of take the blame for this one. But, like, Blizzard, nobody cares about immersion. When we're dying to Frontals like this, just please put straight, hard edges on the edges of the Frontal. Because I thought I was so clearly out of this. Like, you can see the dark purple, and even where it fades out, like, a little bit. Like, I don't feel like I'm stood in that. Apparently, Artie could kind of see me in it and was, like, tempted to grip me. But, yeah, like, when you see these Frontals pop, you see how wide they are in comparison to like what is actually telegraphed. It's mental, and nobody cares for a nice, it's a nice little gradient of the Frontal to fade out so I feel all immersed. No, just put a hard line on it. And then because of that death, we kind of just fall behind here. There's less targets for the Nightbolt to go on, so it's more likely to kill people. There's less kicks for the Nightbolt. There's less targets for the Abyssal Blast to go on as well. So yeah, this is my fault for the key depleting, but we'll blame Blizzard for those ones, won't we, guys? Guys, another stream here. Apparently I just didn't really play any keys between these streams. Interesting. We start off with a 12 stone vault for this one, pumping on the first pull. Then we do a double pull golem chain into the golem pack on the left. And at this point is where I started to outrange the ground pounds. It's got a 30-yard radius. So if you're a ranged class, you can actually stand 30 to 40 yards away, still do your DPS. Some classes, like mages specifically, it does feel like you lose out on damage for not being able to play in melee. I can't get my Cone of Cold resets as easy. On Arcane, my Arcane Orbs, I have to wait for them to travel to generate the charges for me to then dump with a barrage. So it slows me down a lot. And at this key level, I probably can just eat them with good defensive usage. But it's a good habit to get into, I feel like. Again, getting used to these higher key timings. Me and Artie both send towards the end of Edna just to get him down, which means we then have no cooldowns for the double pack after that we normally play. This means that it takes a lot longer, but also Seb does tick out pretty early to the Void Outburst here. Void Infection goes out on him. I should have dispelled him earlier, but we also have other dispels in this group. Like, I'm not just going to take sole responsibility for that, but that's something I could learn from, right? I could have removed his curse instantly. He would have been then higher for the Void Outburst that was going out. He used Zephyr. I don't know if he used other defensives, but he does die pretty early on to that. And then because of that, plus we've got no cooldowns here, this pack does end up taking a while. But because we had no cooldowns for that pack, we then have cooldowns for the massive pack in the corridor that you guys all know that I hate by now. We did a nice line of sight to kind of gather it up, but it was kind of like late and it felt like awkward. So there was a lot of panic as the pool was being gathered. We kind of went around the corner and half of the mobs came around the corner while the other ones were still traveling over and casting. I guess it was just a bad patrol, to be fair. That's probably what this was. So I end up sending my cooldowns pretty much as soon as we get around the corner. So I miss out on a lot of passive cleave and therefore efficiency as well. This only happened from a pure state of panic. Like, now that I've done this once, and if we line of sight on this corner, which I think we should every single time now, then I can just wait for all the mobs to get around the corner. Moving over to the Forge Speakers wing, we've got this big pool with all the Forge Hand Speakers and also a few Menders. Got all my cooldowns for this and 40 stacks of Spy Master's Web. I actually started getting FPS drops here because I got so many Frozen Orb resets. It was a joke. So me and Artie pumped this pack into next week. We're both doing over 7 million DPS here without Lust. I hope that he had 40 stacks for Spy Masters as well, because that is some ridiculous damage output. But super fun pack, and again, really nice to be on the Frost Mage here because that means Relentless can just kite out these Forge Hands because they are very, very scary. Then we do this skip at the end to skip these guards because we don't need them and they are kind of inefficient percent because they're always charging out and you can't always cleave on them. So what I do is I pop my ult to time, Ice Lance them, run away. They both do the Stampede, so they run past me. I alter back and then invis while the group has already skipped at this point. But my Ice Lance procs my Water Elemental. Bloody typical. So that kind of like bugged these out and it meant that they were still in combat with me even when I was invisible. I mean, it's just my luck. Like, this must have been so buggy because the Stampeders aren't even targeting me, but I'm still in combat with something. I'm not really sure. I think the combat even drops at some point, but they don't come over. So we end up pulling, we send all of our cooldowns here with 40 stacks of Spy Masters, and then randomly towards the end of the pack, they just aggro and come in. I have no idea what actually caused them to pull because the other guards didn't even charge that way and bait them in. I don't even know if they can do that. I don't think they would reach. But yeah, obviously this was just kind of some weird buggy scenario that probably won't happen again. I just got turbo unlucky with the Water Ellie proc, which I imagine is what probably caused this. And considering this key was pretty clean for the most part, this timer felt super, super tight. Me and Artie both doing well over 2 million overalls here as well. So I don't really know how we could have sped this up, to be fair. But regardless, we do end up timing the key with a minute left. Again, this is before the 90 seconds was added, so we get 25 score out of this, taking us up to 2,906. Same stream, another missed 12. We're just literally running these keys to try and get 13s that we like. Because it's a fun dungeon to play anyway, but we keep timing them faster and faster. So we get 3 score out of this one at the end. We do just about miss the 2 chest timer here. We time the key with 4 minutes and 40 seconds-ish left. Okay, there we go. So we ran a 12 miss, I guess, as practice to then do a 13 miss, which we run straight after in the same stream. I think I actually messed up at the start here. I need to stand on top of the spike claws as we're running in. I blinked into the pack, which meant that they then leapt over to me because they're not going to leap to Relentless. I think they'll only leap to the DPS. Because if everybody stood in melee, they don't actually leap on anyone and apply the horrible, horrible bleed. So I had to block early here. I'm very lucky that they didn't all just jump on me at the same time. Then on the first boss, we did not manage to one phase, which is kind of embarrassing. So I get my cooldowns to come up here at the end on the second phase. Now, in this specific scenario, I think it was fine to send my cooldowns because Artie didn't. He held his. And also, we're not pulling through the wall as we go down this first slope in the maze because this boss is dead regardless. Like, maybe I send a 45-second here in future and that would be fine, but sending all of my cooldowns is definitely giga overkill and probably a little bit troll. But because we only play a 2-pack next, it's not the end of the world because then it means that I get my cooldowns back for the first pack in the maze after, which is normally like the 4 or 5-pack. So that's definitely something to learn there. Just cooldown management in these higher keys, getting used to the different timings. But for future reference in those scenarios, I will be holding, because we've now figured out that I can slow full Seb, and it means that he can pull through the wall every single time without fail. Rest of the key was pretty clean. Moving on to the last boss, because I'd been swapping back and forth so much between Arcane and Frost here, when I was on Arcane, I was not feeling comfortable with my defensive usage or CC usage at all, throughout the whole key to be fair, but it became very apparent on this last boss, like I was just not ready for the consumptions. Again, because with Frost it's consistent damage all the time, I don't feel like I'm trolling when I press my defensives and use up a global on it, but if I have to use a global inside my Touch of the Magi or inside my Surge, it feels that much worse, so I hate doing it. But I just need to be more proactive and think, okay, right, we're going to face the boss at 70% here. Before I send my cooldowns, I'm going to just pop a mirror image to get them all out and make sure that I've got that damage reduction. But it's just something that I'll learn, and I have learned since. Like, now I'm a lot more comfy and better with my usage of like all utility and defensives. Kind of tight on the timer. Again, I'm just going to say this after every key real quick, but this is before the 90 seconds were added. We timed the key with around just over a minute and a half left, so there is a lot of time still there, but I think it's just a damage and comp issue. At this point in the season, we have actually managed to convince Artie to re-roll off of Shadow Priest, and he's now gearing up an Enhancement Shaman as we speak. And I think that will go a lot better with Mage if I do decide to stick on the Mage, which I think I will because I'm just enjoying it so much. But we will see. And then the final key for this episode, we have a 13 Siege. Is this the only key off stream in this episode? Holy. We do a little skip at the start. To be fair, I don't think we needed to invis here. I think we could just Mind Soothe on the left with a good patrol and we could just walk past. Again, I end up dying to an overlap here with a hook. I do have my Alter Time ready to just teleport back and also replenish all of my health, but a Firebomb hits me at exactly the same time. I had my Dragon's Breath off cooldown, had my Blast Wave off of cooldown, so that's just on me to be more aware of these Firebombs. Like I said, in these higher keys, we're starting to get to grips with the abilities that are all of a sudden doing a lot of damage, it feels like. Then after the second boss, again, we skipped the spot of the pack up the stairs. I've read the comments on my last video, so thanks for you guys that were pointing out that apparently if you stand directly, if everybody in your group stands directly behind the snipers, then their shoots are kind of like a frontal. So they only target the tank and then you just don't have to deal with them. So that's interesting. And maybe we'll re-add them back to our route for future keys because that sounds pretty free. And then again, what seemed like we were going to just be playing this 2-pack by themselves, I sent my cooldowns here. And it seems like the tank was kind of waiting for the Azerite charge to go out and then he chained. But by this time, my damage has already completely gone out. Again, that's on me for not looking at the route. I have a horrible habit of just looking at the start of the dungeon on these routes and not necessarily taking notes of what we'll be pulling later. Not the end of the world because we do survive the pack, but obviously it would have been a lot easier and more efficient if I did just save my cooldowns for the 5 or 6 mobs that we ended up killing here. So as you can see, we have left up the sniper pack right at the back of the room here, so we need to be aware of that at all times during this Hadal fight. And in these higher keys, there does become a point in this fight where the boss will do his frontal crushing or crashing tide on the tank at the same time as you're lossing from the waves, from the tidal surge. So the tank has to be very aware about how he's baiting that because it can get very, very funky with the positioning. And that does actually end up killing Artie in this fight. He very nearly got out of it. The tank could have baited more towards one side and then it would have been more apparent as to which side we should dodge on. But I mean, it happens and the tank wasn't in comms, so. And then from what I was talking about earlier in the video, me and Artie send our cooldowns on the first platform. Then on the second platform, we lost without our cooldowns. Well, as a mage, I think I actually get my cooldowns back because of my shifting power. They're up so frequently. And then I also have my cooldowns for the last platform as well, but they don't come up until after we killed Demolishing Tentacle. So in higher keys, I imagine it's probably going to be a case of the timings will be pretty much perfect for me, but they definitely were not perfect because we don't care about the damage on the gripping. Like, as long as we're not running out of time on the key, the Demolishing Tentacles are the only tentacles that you care about. So maybe I should have saved my cooldowns for this particular key level because this last platform is just that much scarier. But we do time the Siege 13 with around a minute left. And we get 16 score out of this one, taking us up to 2,936. But that's where we're going to leave it for this episode. As I mentioned at the start of this video, I want to try and play a bit of catch up here. So we got a lot of score in this episode and we'll do the same in the next episode to get us above 3K, because then people can actually start taking us seriously, because we have been like very close to the title range this whole season and it doesn't even matter until the end of the season, right? That's when we'll do the big push. But if you guys are enjoying this series, then leave a like down below, subscribe to your boy, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.